And the whole turf stuff and everything, all of it is ridiculous. It's all got to stop. We've got to calm everybody down and have a genuinely reasoned and sensible and calm debate about the reality, which is more and more trans women are now trying to compete in women's sport, for example, and that involves them using women's spaces and so on. Is that right and proper and fair, or does it erode women's rights? And if, as I would conclude, it erodes women's rights, what's the answer? So that trans women can still compete in sport, but in a way that doesn't trample other people's rights. That's all I want.
I find myself flabbergasted that I'm going to say this, but Piers Morgan makes, I think, a relatively good point here. I'm going to share this clip with you where Tomi Lahren and Piers and a couple of trans guests talk about Meta's new rules around moderating content with a specific bent, a specific angle on trans and that particular topic. This is the Piers Morgan show, so it does devolve into some petty schoolyard taunting. But out of this, I think there are a couple of interesting points, which is why I decided to share it with you. So why don't we watch it together? I'll chime in when I can't help myself. And then I want to know what you think in the comments. But let's look at it together.
On all previous Facebook, Instagram policies about, including the gender issue, he said, we do allow now allegations of mental illness or abnormality when based on gender or sexual orientation, given political and religious discourse about transgenderism and homosexuality and common non-serious usage of words like weird. These are revised company guidelines. Do you feel completely comfortable with that? I mean, do you think we should be encouraging people to say that all trans people are mentally ill or they're weird or whatever? Or do you think that slightly crosses a line of being fair and equal to them?
Well, listen, free speech is saying what you want to say. It's also hearing what you don't want to hear. There's plenty on these so-called free speech platforms that I don't like to see. I don't like to see transgenderism pushed on children, but unfortunately, that's been in existence on Meta platforms and on TikTok for several years now. It's unfortunate. So I think you need to open up the other side of the conversation. I'm not all the way optimistic that Meta is actually going to do that. I mean, anytime we talk about even equality for women in women's sports and them being able to compete at a high level with other women, you're censored on Meta platforms. I know because I work for Outkick that talks about this issue a lot and is at the forefront of the issue. So I'm cautiously optimistic. But listen, I don't agree with bullying people, calling people mentally ill or weird. I don't personally do that. I don't like it. However, if you're going to have a platform that talks about both sides of the issue, you have to let the other side be able to speak as well. I'm hopeful that we can see that.
Yeah, and Eli, if you're getting professors who are not remotely transphobic, like my last guest, getting told to shoot themselves dead, fillet a gun in their mouths, as he put it, what right does the other side have to then say, well, you can't use mean words like weird about us? Genuinely.
Well, that's a huge generalization, Piers. I don't support anyone encouraging abuse or harm to anyone. And most trans people don't either. Like Brianna said, there is a very reactionary fringe who may engage in these very harmful behaviors and rhetoric. This doesn't represent all trans people. And surprisingly, I also find myself agreeing with Tomi that no, we should not have bullying on these platforms. And this means also not calling trans people weird. This new policy actually infringes on free speech because when I'm called mentally ill or weird, I stop engaging, and that obstructs my ability and willingness to speak. So what this policy is doing is discouraging queer and trans people, along with migrants who are also included in this policy, from speaking on their own behalf.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to that the behavior of the extremists in the trans community has been a massive problem. When someone like J.K. Rowling tried to have a reasonable debate about this and just got utterly bombarded with death threats. And the whole turf stuff and everything, all of it is ridiculous. It's all got to stop. We've got to calm everybody down and have a genuinely reasoned and sensible and calm debate about the reality, which is more and more trans women are now trying to compete in women's sport, for example, and that involves them using women's spaces and so on. Is that right and proper and fair, or does it erode women's rights? And if, as I would conclude, it erodes women's rights, what's the answer? So that trans women can still compete in sport, but in a way that doesn't trample other people's rights. That's all I want. Brianna, last word to you on this. I mean, the new meta guidelines, I think they're long overdue just generally, in the sense that so much stuff was getting censored that actually you couldn't say anything about anyone without someone somewhere trying to get you cancelled and often being thrown off social media. So do you welcome them?
Well, wait a minute. Isn't that separate things, right? I mean, isn't cancel culture user-driven? That's not platform-driven, even if the platforms drifted into that sometimes. I don't have data on this. And admittedly, I'm on the left side of the spectrum, so what I see of right-leaning hate is just troll stuff. The right-leaning rational opinions that are asking questions in a good faith way don't trigger anything in me. I'm hungry for those conversations because, I mean, part of exploring an issue is being open to considering it in a way that you haven't before. But so much of what I see on the platforms is hateful. It's hateful. And, neither side of the political spectrum has a corner on that market. There's hate from the left and hate from the right. And I don't think it moves anything forward. What I frequently see are the extremes of either side using cherry-picked examples of really upsetting hate. And I guess, in my opinion, that's more frequently from the right than it is from the left. I think that's more mainstreamed on the right than it is on the left. But again, I don't have data to back this up. That's just what I sort of experience. But when Piers Morgan says we just need to have a reasonable, good faith debate, I couldn't agree with him more on that particular point.
Cleo, what do you feel about it?
Piers, this is the fundamental problem, is when Eli and her fringe trans friends make all this stuff and they try to deny reality. They try to deny the reality. I'm a natal male that transitioned to live as a woman. Most people call me she, her as I go about my day. That's fine. That's all I need. I don't need someone to have some existential belief that I'm a woman. I need them to let me have control over my own body and go get health care. What she has done and her playbook does is it elevates all these issues to like hidden knowledge. And they try to shut normal people up when they have questions about trans women in sports, or they have questions about calling themselves pregnant people. Like, it is just imposition after imposition. And when you try to shut people up for so long, eventually they're just going to explode. And this is 100% what we're seeing on Facebook in the American system right now. We've got to stop trying to win debates by silencing them, and we need to come back with some facts. And Piers, here's a fact. There was a 2018 study that came out that showed that Eli and I both have protein receptors in how we process testosterone. This could be a reason about why we turned out the way that we did. We don't have to deny the reality of sex to admit that there's probably some sort of biological thing that's going on with both of us that makes us behave the way we do.
Right. And look,
feel the way that we do. So let's have an honest discussion about that.
I agree. And look, the bottom line is, if I'm transphobic, then why are 2/3 of this panel trans?
Right.
Oh, give me a break, dude. Because you booked them.
Eli?
You booked them to make a circus out of it, right? You booked two trans people that you knew had opposing views. Like, please. Oh, well, just, if I'm transphobic, it's not about you, first of all.
The last time I checked, Tommy, you're not trans.
Representation doesn't have anything to do with ideology.
You know what?
There's a lot of work to do in our community, and all progress gets some pushback, to answer Brianna.
Yeah, look, it's a good debate.
It's not an answer. It's not a serious answer. You're not a serious person. We need to put some adults in charge of our movement again. It's embarrassing. You setting up a network to give children hormones illegally was hugely embarrassing. You should quit. You should stop doing everything you're doing and never talk about this issue again. Stop. You're hurting us.
Eli, you going to stop?
outside
Why
of
are you
the...
giving children hormones? I want an answer for that. Why are you setting up a network to give children hormones illegally?
outside of the clear ad hominem
Why
attacks?
are you doing that?
Again,
Just
all
answer the
progress
question. Don't give me bullshit. Why are
all
you doing
progress requires some pushback.
Why are you giving children
We are going
hormones
to need to
illegally?
keep on
Why are you
fighting
doing
if
this,
we
Eli?
want to see trans
Why
youth
did you set up a network to give
protected and
children
get the
hormones?
necessary health care that they need.
She can't answer. She's not a serious person, Piers. This is not serious time.
I'm sorry, yelling over me isn't going to solve
You're not
anything.
answering the question. Why are you giving children hormones legally? Why are you setting up networks to do this, Eli? Why?
So
This is a crime. I want to know why you're doing it. It really hurts us. It makes us look deranged. Why are you doing
Eli,
this?
why are you doing it?
Well, this is going to make some great TV. Look, when trans youth are denied necessary health care, we always have to step in. And right now, under very brave trans lawyers like Chase Strangio are in the Supreme Court fighting for trans kids because
In a case he's going to lose.
I actually
There's no
agree
such
with
thing
that.
as a trans kid.
Tommy?
That's very silly.
Piers, there's no such thing as a trans kid. That's child abuse. When you take somebody who's still growing up, figuring out who they are, doesn't know anything about sexuality and shouldn't at that young age, and you try to convince them that there's something other than what they were born to be, that's a problem. It's child abuse. That's my opinion. But also, you're talking about trans kids and their mental health. There was a study that was done about mental health for trans youth, and guess what? The results did not come back favorably, so they wanted to bury it, and that is a fact. So if you show me some data that shows that this gender affirming care is actually beneficial, let's see it, because the one that was done that a lot of money was poured into came out the other way, and the community tried to bury it. So don't
That's not
target
quite
children.
correct.
If you want to talk about adults,
It's definitely not quite correct, and Tomi Lahren is wrong about this. I do have firsthand experience. Gender dysphoria is a real thing. I don't know why it is suddenly seeming as prevalent as it is, but gender affirming care isn't turning kids into trans whatever. It's about supporting individual health, and it's done in concert with the doctor, and they're making it sound, I mean, I don't know all the details on this, but so much for a good faith reason to debate. It's turned into ad hominem gotchas and shouting over each other. And then, Tomi Lahren never disappoints with, another right-wing screed about how, I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but trans people are weird.
trans rights for adults, that's fine. But leave children out of that. And that's what a lot of conservatives are simply asking for. Leave kids alone. Let them live their lives and figure out what they want to do when they're of age to make those kind of decisions.
I completely listen. We had an infamous clinic in London called the Tavistock Clinic where no one was allowed to criticise what they were doing, which was mutilating young kids. And it's shut down now in total disgrace and ignominy and shame. But you know what isn't shut down? The damage that was done to those kids. And I'm afraid that I agree with Tommy. I don't think any prepubescent child should ever be exposed to any of this nonsense. Let them go through
And why is
puberty.
that, Piers?
Let them go through puberty and work out for themselves what kind of life they want. That's fine. But don't mutilate kids or treat them this way or pump them with hormones or puberty blockers.
I was one of those children, Piers, and I'm an adult now. I'm very happy.
Good for you, but many children were not. And many of them now regret it.
The vast majority were.
Yeah, many of them regret it. Have you had kids, Eli?
Everywhere between 1 and 2.5.
Eli, have you had kids?
This doesn't matter. I was one of those
No,
children.
have you had kids? I'm asking you, are you a parent?
All right, I'm going to stop it right there. I had such high hopes. I was willing to give Piers Morgan the benefit of the doubt, but here we go again with all of the... I don't know why I keep coming back here. I guess there must be some part of my brain that enjoys feeling this upset. But anyway, lots to talk about, folks. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments?